ever stopped and wondered how the world around us actually works? I mean, from the app you just used to the electricity powering your screen right now, pretty much everything is run by a business. But here's the thing, they're not all the same. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the three major players that really shape our economy: the private sector, the public sector, and global enterprises. Let's jump in. Okay, just think about your day so far. The company that made your phone, that's almost certainly a private business. But the train you might have taken to work or school, that's likely a public government-run service. See? We're interacting with this whole complex world of business all the time, and most of us don't even realize who's really calling the shots. And this whole setup, well, that's what economists call a mixed economy. You can think of it like a giant ecosystem. You've got all these different players, private companies, government organizations, and massive global corporations, all living, competing, and sometimes even cooperating in the very same space. So let's start by taking a closer look at one of the biggest players out there, the government. All right, so first on our list is the public sector. Basically, this is everything that's owned and managed by the government. But it's not just one big blob. It actually comes in three pretty distinct flavors, and each one plays by its own set of rules. So, the first and, oldest form is something called a departmental undertaking. I know, the name sounds super formal, but don't let it throw you. Just think of it as a business that's literally part of a government department. It's not a separate company at all, it's more like a specialized division. Indian Railways is a classic example. It's run directly by the Ministry of Railways. Yeah, you can really see just how tightly woven into the government these things are. All their funding, it comes straight from the government's main bank account, the Treasury, through the annual budget. The people who work there are government employees. And this means everything they do is under the direct control of a ministry, and they're fully accountable to the parliament. There is absolutely no separation. They are the government. And all that control, it's a real double-edged sword. On the plus side, you get a ton of public accountability, which is great for things like national security. But the downside is massive. It leads to something called red tapeism. Just imagine every little decision needing to go through layers and layers of bureaucracy. That kind of system kills flexibility and leads to huge delays. It's just not built to move fast. Okay, moving on to our second type, statutory corporations. Now, this one is a whole different animal. Instead of being a part of a ministry, this is a separate body that's brought into existence by a special law, a specific act passed in Parliament. That act basically serves as its birth certificate and its entire rulebook. And this is where things get interesting, because this is all about independence. A statutory corporation is its own legal entity. That means it can own property, it can sign contracts, it can even be sued, all in its own name. It finances itself, and its employees aren't government officials. The whole point is to give it the freedom to operate more like a private business. So the dream here is to get the best of both worlds, right? You get the power and backing of the government, but with the speed and initiative of a private company. But here's the catch. In reality, it's a tough balancing act. That flexibility can look great on paper, but political interference is a constant issue. If the government is appointing all the advisors and board members, well, that so-called freedom can disappear pretty quickly. And that leads us right into our third and final type of public enterprise, the government company. This one is probably the most familiar looking because it's structured just like a regular company. The rule is dead simple. If the government owns at least 51% of the shares, congratulations, it's a government company. That majority ownership is everything. And here you can see, they really are designed to operate out in the wild, in the market. They're registered under the Companies Act, just like any private business. They can even raise money from the public by listing on the stock market. That's right, you could actually own a piece of one. They are built to compete. So what's the catch here? Well, there's a really important trade-off. They're easy to set up and have a lot of autonomy, but critics argue that this structure can sometimes avoid direct accountability to Parliament. It's that classic debate. How do you give a company enough freedom to innovate and compete while also making sure it's always serving the public interest? It's not easy. Now, it's super important to remember that the role of the public sector isn't set in stone. In fact, it's changed a lot. There's been a huge shift in thinking over the years about how involved the government should be in business. If you look back to 1956, the game plan was pretty straightforward. The government had to build the country from the ground up. It needed to create the heavy industries, the infrastructure, the foundational stuff. But then you fast forward to 1991, and the whole philosophy shifts. The economy needed a jolt, so a new policy was introduced to open things up. reduce government control, and bring in private and global investment. And this quote right here, it perfectly explains why the government had to take the lead back then. Think about it. Building a massive steel plant or a huge dam costs an incredible amount of money, and you won't see any profit for years, maybe decades. Private companies just weren't going to take on that kind of risk, so the government had to step up. And the result of that big 1991 policy shift, it was absolutely massive. Just look at this. In 1956, 17 key industries were basically government-only zones. By 2001, that number had dropped to just 3. The floodgates were thrown wide open, inviting private companies to jump in and compete in areas that were off-limits for decades. So how exactly did they open those floodgates? One of the main tools was a strategy called disinvestment. It sounds complicated, but it's really not. It just means the government started selling off some of its shares in these public companies. By selling them to private investors or the general public, it could raise funds, bring in fresh perspectives, and loosen its grip on the economy. But here's the thing, this story isn't just about a tug-of-war between public and private companies. When those economic doors opened up, it didn't just let local businesses in, it unleashed a third, incredibly powerful player onto the field, the global enterprise. You've definitely heard of these. We call them multinational corporations, or MNCs for short. These are the titans of the business world. Huge organizations with operations, factories, and marketing campaigns that span the entire globe. And their power, it's just on another level. We're talking about massive amounts of cash, sometimes more than the entire economy of a small country. They bring in the latest technology, super advanced marketing strategies, and manage it all from a central headquarters somewhere back in their home country. Their scale is just mind-boggling. So what happens when all these different players, the public ones, the private ones, the global giants, decide to work together instead of competing? Well, that's when you get what's called a joint venture. It's essentially a business alliance. 2 or more companies team up for a specific project, pool their money and their skills, and then share in whatever happens next, the profits and the risks. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, right? We've got the public sector, the private sector, and these global giants. But why should you care? Why does all this stuff actually matter? Well, because it shows us that these different sectors aren't really supposed to be rivals. They're more like partners, or maybe different parts of the same team, all working to build the country. I like to think of it like this. The public sector builds the strong, reliable highways, and the private sector designs the fast, innovative cars that drive on them. You absolutely need both to get anywhere. And that brings us to one final, big question to leave you with. In this economy that's changing faster than ever, who do you think is going to be in the driver's seat for the future? Will it be the steady hand of government, the dynamic innovation of private business, or the sheer scale of global corporations? The answer to that is going to define all of our lives for years to come.